Hey everybody, this is Greg. Welcome to another episode of Sigmar and Son. And today we have a special guest with us, Tom from Warhammer Weekly. Tom, say hi.
Hello, friends.
And we have Mark with us also.
It wouldn't be Sigmar and Son without the sun.
It would be Sigmar without Sun.
Indeed.
Or Cetra and Sun. Probably more likely. Anyway, just kind of starting off, thought we'd go through some of the news. And then eventually we're going to be talking list building. And Tom, as you may see by Warhammer Weekly in his little image, is the master of list building. And Tom's helped me with a few things that in the past with my Adepticon lists and stuff. Always helpful advice he's willing to give.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm the master of list building, but I do write a lot of lists.
Well, you think outside the box as well, I think too, with like not trying to play what's meta.
Yeah,
you're always trying to find something different.
I'm trying to remake them. Like I'm trying to my lists will always respond to the meta, and I want to I think thinking outside the box is kind of a good description. Like I don't want to I'm not going to do the things that are obviously overpowered because that's not any fun. Like there's okay, I smash people off the table. Like that's not.
It's not fun unless you can aggravate them. That's what somebody told me once.
It's not fun unless they don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mark, can you check the comment thing if anybody joins?
Yes.
Keep track of that. So yeah, basically, I don't want to go into a whole bunch of news, but we have up for pre-order today the Black Coach, and that is a beautiful model. And with the other Nighthaunt stuff, there is the easy to build chain rasp boards. And I'm noticing a theme here, the set of 10 of those for $40. And
it's pretty steep.
I was going to say they got really proud of this set of releases.
Yeah, for push to fit bottles, 10 for $40 is.
Yeah, my dad told me that last night, and I was like, "Oh, the reason they're $40 is because I think they're not push to fit, and there's like more customization." He's like, "Nope, you're wrong." I was like, "I am wrong."
Is US $115, which is pretty steep, but that is a beautiful model. But then again, also the Sequitors. Now, Tom, these are the guys that are totally broke.
Oh, they're so good. Yes, they are. They are really good. And as Vince would say, they will be going up in points in the next G.
Enjoy your. I will enjoy your tears next year after you buy all these. But anyway, yeah, if you want to go for them, set of 10 for $60.
It's not bad. I mean, I would probably just buy a bunch of core sets.
Yeah, I was going to say where this is leading.
That's what I think the best thing to do is, yeah. If you buy a core set, you can buy the core set, and then you can just like sell whatever half you don't want, and then sell the book too.
Or you do the Tempest, like the Tempest Soul one. Which is like the micro set for like $80.
The $80 one. Yeah.
Like that's really where the money's at, is that $80 one, because like you get like so much in that. And you're like push to fit for the Sequitors away from a unit of 10 there. So like for $80 for 95 you get 10 Sequitors and everything else. Or you could just get 10 Sequitors for $60.
Right. And so they I noticed also there that they had, I mean, you get 10 of the chain rasps in there.
Yep.
And 4 or 5 of the other 2 guys that you get from the start, or the guys that almost looked like the Grave Wraith Stalkers, I guess is what I was going to say.
Yeah, they're bad. I mean, they're not terrible, but they're not good.
Oh, I kind of liked them better than the other ones, the ones with the scythes.
Really? Oh man, those scythes, like that's death incarnate.
They are okay.
Because they're like,
you're a master list builder and I'm not.
Well, no, it's just like with the scythes, they're basically almost on like against like other larger units. They're perpetually on like 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 rend 1 damage, and they also have reroll all hits.
Okay.
And so you get they are elite infantry with basically flat reroll all hits, and they're on a unrendable 4+ save for 140 for 10 or 360 for 30.
Right.
And you can deep strike with them. So it's really good.
So, hey, 2 other things came out. These are just, again, awesome looking, I guess, hero models for Stormcast. I'm not a Stormcast player, but the Lord Arcanum, Solarian or whatever, and the Aventus Firestrike, Magister of Hammerhall. Both of these are pretty incredible looking.
Also kind of steep in price, I think.
But they're also $115. So basically they're like on, I don't know, like some sort of large griffin, right? Type thing or something. I don't know.
Unicorn thing. The bases are sweet.
It's the winged donkey, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Winged donkey. Okay. With
like it has the ram horns or whatever, but it looks like it has the hee-haw like mouth.
Yeah.
Like really like kind of messed up mouth.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's got a sweet base, that's for sure.
Oh, well, it looks like it's actually one kit that builds both of them.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
So I could share that, but go to the webpage, GW's webpage, and take a look at that. So, yeah, that's kind of the new releases, and that's coming out this week. And so there's still some stuff that hasn't come out yet, right, for Nighthaunt?
You've got
the Nighthaunts with the swords.
Yeah, the Blade Wraiths, something like that.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. And then the ones that you and Vince didn't like, the ones that basically get extra damage if bravery is 6 or less.
Those the weird things with the roses in their hair?
They look like the Banshees, except they're Myrmidons or something.
Yeah. No, not the Mirrormorn is what you're thinking, but no, it's not those one. It's the like Blade Maidens or something. I don't know. They're the Harridans, something Harridans. Yeah, they're both. Like they're just not they're not worth 5 for 90 points. Is what
well, if you had this whole bravery list I was talking about, maybe. But
and so this goes back to what I was saying, that like everything, like, so when I say language like it's bad, inherently its numbers aren't necessarily bad. It's just that like for the cost, it's not efficient compared to other similar units.
Yeah. And we'll get into the whole cost and efficiency and things to do.
Yep.
So I did have a couple shout outs I wanted to do. I don't know if you'll have anything. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Sean. Sean is our local Games Workshop store manager, and he is moving on to bigger and better things, not with Games Workshop. But he's always taken care of me and Mark in the past, and so just wanted to give him a thumbs up and a thanks, and good luck in the future, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a shout out to my some of my local gaming community at Battleforge here in Lexington. I got to hang out with them a little bit this afternoon, and it was a blast. And I'm hoping to kind of spruik some of what they have going on there, and maybe offer some painting classes with them. And
that's cool.
It'll be neat. It'll be neat. So if you're in the Lexington area, check out Battleforge. Right.
We got one other thing coming up in St. Louis, Siege World, August 25th and 26th. They're having a Warhammer, they're having 40K tournament, but they're also Saturday, they're having a 2,000 point ITC event, and Sunday they're having a 1,000 point ITC event. So I guess it's a 3-round and a 2-round one there for those. And so gateway-gamers.com if you're interested in that. Interested in St. Louis, definitely something I'm going to be there for sure.
I hope I'm off.
So other news this week, the FAQ dropped, and I know you guys went through this on your show. I don't want to go through all the big changes, all the changes. I was just going to say hit some of the highlights for people.
There were a couple changes.
Yeah. Just a couple changes. Most of the stacking of command points became limited. So all the really seemingly overpowered ones, like Glotkin is one I had complained about. got hit to where they are limited to once per the models can only be affected once by that.
It is not the change I wanted to see, but I'll take it.
What did you want to see?
I wanted to see just the like not back to
Rule
the old
of
ways.
one.
I just wanted to see I wanted to have them ruled of one, so you had to take like multiple different heroes to get like kind of like the combos and stuff, rather than just one guy saying you get this, you get this, you get this. Just so you'd see more variety, I think that way. But this is, I mean, not just as good in my book, but it's comparable.
My concern is that
It's less broken than what it was before.
They left the Ironjaw stuff alone. All
yeah,
that still stacks.
because
Yeah.
they wanted that.
They did.
They wanted wow.
And when it happens, it will be glorious.
GW confirmed they hate Seraphon, says Crazy Horse. I don't know if that's true. I still think they're pretty good.
What, they hate what?
They hate Seraphon. I think if they hated Seraphon, they'd be like Engine of the Gods. They would totally have changed it. I still think it's
that's
great.
coming up on our topic, one of the things I was going to talk about. I think that the stacking of the command points. My only concern, like you said, Mark, is that there's one secret one out there that they've missed, right? And somebody's going to find it and just kind of.
I think
somebody
found
like
it already.
Oh, I mean, I may or may not have found things. But I mean, the reality is once things get found, they're going to get fixed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In the next cycle. So I wouldn't stress about it, folks.
Right.
It's not the end of the world.
So speaking of things that are found and fixed to oblivion almost, the lens of refraction.
I'm happy with this change.
You're happy about that? I think it's almost too much of a hammer on it, the Nerf hammer. But
yeah, I would say that
the number. Go ahead, Tom.
I would just say, like, it provided a nice counter for Magic against the Magic heavy armies.
Yeah.
Like
no, it did.
Like hyper Magic heavy armies. I would have liked it if they would have went. So like the fact that they nerfed Spell Mirror as well, I mean, I think helps. I might have liked it if they like went all the way with the lens, which maybe said like, sure, the lens stays as it is, but all spellcasters within 18 inches of the lens gets like -2 to cast, or even worse, rerolls all successful casts. And so what that does is that if you build with that, what ends up happening is that you don't get magic.
Sure.
Because like, let's say they said that it forces rerolls, because you're going to have the lens like in a central place in your army, so that you only benefit from it within 6 inches.
So
Right.
you're saying it would affect both you and your opponent. Yeah.
Right. And then, so like, yes, it reduces damage to your units in that area, but like maybe it forces any successful casts within 18 inches. And so it's really hard to use it offensively. And instead what ends up happening is that you just don't get your own magic if you run that item.
Right.
I
Or
see
I
something
could have
like
seen
that.
where it could be used multiple times in a turn, like roll how many times it could be used in a turn or something, you know.
I could see that.
But just not every single spell. But anyway, the other
Or
one.
like on a 4+. I mean, there's a ton of things that we could just go on about this.
The clarification of closest models, and this one made sense to me because I was like a D&D player, and I always like, oh, if you do if you run away from combat in D&D, they get a opportunity attack, right? So I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. But what we're talking about, folks, is the two models against a large model, and now they're both the same distance. And basically, that large model, unless he can totally flip onto the other side of him, he can't move.
Yeah, and the irony is that like the two models can still move if they
The two
want.
models can still rotate around, right? So it really hurts big models.
Right.
So, yeah, I kind of don't like that. And then, and you mentioned on your show, there's like there's some of the whole weird stuff like pinning a unit with that rule by not even touching a model, just kind of like levitating it where it can't move by having people equidistant away.
Yeah, I mean, I hope nobody ever does that. But the reality is that like the way the rule is currently written, there are these weird situations that can
right. And actually, I think that the way, I guess I played too much Starfleet battles where you played the rules that were written and everybody learned those weird things, and that was just part of the game.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not against that.
Right.
You go to a tournament, people are going to get you with this.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is. Be cautious of it.
Yeah, I don't think like if somebody actually did that to you, you should be like, oh, your sports score is horrible. No, because I mean, why should I penalize? Because that's the rules. Anyway, another point. Umbral Spell Portal. I don't know what you thought of this. Maximum of 1 spell cast through the portal, basically. Right? Is that the gist of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna get 1 spell through it, like each turn.
I think its points should have went down with that, like to 40 or 30.
I agree.
Like it's 60 points. Like they reduced the effectiveness by like 500% because obviously they made it with the idea being you should be able to cast 4 or 5 spells through it. Now it's just 1.
Yeah, that does seem to be a problem that they have. They'll nerf something but not change the points.
Yeah, well, they can't. Like because they committed to only do points updates once a year.
Okay.
And they do updates twice a year.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that oftentimes, like with those kind of fixes, they don't update the points right away. So yeah, it's a brutal fix, is what I would say. I only see Nagash armies picking it up.
Yeah. I think the fix I would have liked to see maybe is like you can choose to cast through it, but you have to maybe like roll a die like 4+ you can cast through it or something like that.
I would have liked to seen something like you increase the cast cost if you're casting through it.
It's not a bad idea. I like both of those. The other limitation I think I would have put on it is I would have said that the caster is considered to be casting from the node rather than from their original location, which would have meant that you could unbind.
Oh yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call too.
But Dad, your fix doesn't work because you have to. Don't you cast first and then you declare
your
target, right?
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Well,
you can cast and then choose to have it go through the spell portal.
Right.
Yeah. In which case, yeah. So.
All right. Well, so much for that brilliant idea. Speaking of nerfed to whatever, not nerfed. I mean, I still think he's good, but Lord Croak kind of got the hammer on him. Celestial Deliverance, they basically increased the cast cost to what, 8, 9, 10?
Yep.
And then
limited its effectiveness severely.
Yeah, and then the pick up to 3 enemy units within 10 inches of the caster. That was the big thing, I thought. I don't know what it was before. It's hard to check with the changes, whatever, but 3 guys within 10 of the caster.
Oh, it was everybody. It was all enemy units within 3d6 inches, I think. Or 3d6 inches
of a spot you picked, or him?
No, of your starter spot. But the key is that like the range increased, like your flat range increases, just added on to that 3d6, and so you could do like everything within 24 inches of him.
Sure.
And so like he was literally just bombing for multiple mortal wounds every time he did it, in this huge area of the board, which was fairly insane.
Right. So and then. So I don't know if he's, again, probably not worth his points anymore. I don't know. And he's still good, though, right?
He's not.
He's going to be one of those, if you're going to build a Seraphon summoning list, that's where his points are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a stronger case for running like a double...
Starseer or whatever?
No, like a double frog list. Like a double Slan list instead of doing like him. You just... like 2 Slan for a marginally higher cost.
Mm-hmm.
And you get 6 spells per round instead of 4.
Right. And finally, the other thing I was going to talk about was Engine of the Gods, which was not kind of lightly touched here, was that it stays the same, but the units can't move after summon. We'll see how that works out. I don't know. That still looked awful powerful to me.
Yeah, I mean,
strong, I guess.
Reduces its effectiveness, but it's still good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll be seeing like double Engine of the God list now, but I still think.
I think you'll see 4 Engine of the God lists.
No.
I mean,
maybe you.
All in for
terrible. Like, hey, getting a bunch of free points every turn. It's not
bad.
Yeah, free points are not bad.
Free things are generally broken.
So, just kind of going into list building, and basically we're going to be talking about pitched battle list building, which is basically the ones where using the General's Handbook.
Yep.
We have that the Malign Sorcery book, the General's Handbook, the regular rule book, and that's part of the problem is you got all these
and all of the FAQs and all of the designer notes for all.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the Malign Sorcery book, guess I'm complaining now, doesn't have the rules for the spells in them. You got them only on the cards. Kind of crazy.
It's so fantastic. Sorry.
So, but yeah, so basically, when you're building your list, though, you're going to be using so many points, right? So, and you're going to play a so many point game. Mark, anybody chatting anything out there?
Yeah, I guess Crazy Horse mentioned that Krog also lost his rerolls, which was probably the biggest hit to him, honestly.
Okay. That's the command point?
Yeah.
Extra, can't use a command point to buy extra command points?
Yeah.
Rerolls?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess I'm just mostly talking about a 2,000 point army and this stuff that I was going to bring up because, and you can basically do 1,000 points, 1,500 points, 2,000, 3,000 point armies, and they have different amounts of units that are required in each. So basically, starting off with your list building, you're going to start off by choosing an allegiance. And that is all units of the army must be the same allegiance or be allied to that allegiance. And then so each allegiance is going to have unique battle traits that are used for every unit in the list that has that allegiance. And that's right, Tom, not right. Only the allies don't get the allegiance abilities.
Correct.
Right.
And that includes items, that includes everything. So there's been a lot of confusion, and basically they clarified in the FAQ that like you have to have the keyword in order to be included in the allegiance. And if you don't have that, then you don't get any of the toys. You don't get any of the anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so basically I'm going to kind of throw up this thing here and point to things. So basically this this has Death Allegiance. It has Malignant and Night Haunt. Yeah, so it has those three allegiances. So it can be in a Death army, it can be in a Malignant army, or it can be in a Night Haunt army.
Funny story, Malignants aren't actually a thing. Like they are, but they're really like it's a keyword that shows up, and you could technically declare allegiance, but it's not really
right. There is no Malignant artifacts or anything, right?
Correct.
So, all right. So each allegiance is going to have those unique battle traits, and then they're going to have unique artifacts and spells for that allegiance. So just kind of going over when you're building your list, there's certain battlefield rules and certain requirements to build your list. The first thing is a leader. You're going to have to name a general, so you need at least one leader, or one hero.
Well, that's not exactly true. Right? Didn't they used to have like I remember old like Night Haunt lists before all this crap came out. Like you just have Hexwraith as your general.
You could, but that's been changed in 2.0.
Okay, I see.
Now you're required to have a hero.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you working on, Tom? More terrain?
I am in the process of gluing together a piece of terrain that I hungrily desired, dare I say lusted after, which is this terrible piece of Death Watch or Death Knell Watch. I had a really good idea for how to build this with some of the other stuff, and so I needed this exact piece of terrain. And I found somebody locally that had one that they weren't using it, so they were willing to part with it for Johan from the Gargant, like the guy we see like running away. The giant kit. He's like, that's all I want. If you have one of those, I'll trade you. And I was like, I would feel like a terrible person if I literally just gave you Johan for this like previously $30 terrain kit that's now like $60 to $70 on eBay. So I at least gave him the entire Gargant kit. I was like, here, you get two things now instead of just the running away guy.
Yeah.
Halo might tell you that you basically still screwed him because they're Oh, it's Gargant, not the.
It's the giant. Like
Yeah.
it's the giant kit. We're not gonna like. I was trying to use the official terms, but whatever. It's the giant.
Right. Well, anyway, back to our battlefield rules. We got leaders, and in a 2,000-point army, you can have up to 6 leaders, and that's important when we get into the command points. The big thing is the other thing is that you have to have battle line units. So in your army, in your points, a unit will be battle line. And in a 2,000-point army, you have to have 3 or more battle line units. And certain units are battle line across the whole allegiance. Like this is a battle line. What?
Grand Alliance.
They're battle line for the Grand Alliance. They're like chain rasps or battle line for all of death. But certain units can be battle line only for like Mark, your rats, right?
Storm Fiends are only battle line for Scryer. And then you have conditional battle line like Idenith, where you can have the Eels be battle line if you have like Fulturnus as your general. So
right. So
just look into that one, making an army.
Lots of different things, but the big deal is you still have to have battle line of you have to have 3 battle line units. Some people it's different when you build lists with them. Sometimes people consider them just kind of attacks, and they take the minimum amount of like a minimum unit, and other people kind of basically build a big tar pit, I guess, out of their battle lines or some of the. I guess it depends on the list you're building.
Just depends on the army. I think some people have better battle lines than others.
Yeah, I mean, functionally, like my army that I took to Adepticon this year was almost all like the core of the army. Over 90% of the models were battle line models.
Right.
So I mean, sometimes they're going to be the heart of your army. Sometimes they're just going to be chaff.
Right. So I guess the other thing is behemoths. There can be up to 4. Artillery, there can be up to 4. If you actually had a model that fits both of these, it actually does fill in both those slots, right?
Right.
Yeah, same with like leader. Like
so if you had a behemoth
Laura
leader, that would count as 1 leader and 1 behemoth.
Yep.
And toward your maximum of 6 and 4.
Yep, those are true maximums, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going what's wrong?
someone in chat said, so weird seeing Tom without his Balder half.
Oh, Balder half. Wow.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I do slip out to play occasionally, folks.
War Scroll battalions are the next thing that you're going to consider in a list. And so these things have a cost. You must purchase certain units to be part of that battalion, and units in that battalion gain a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
you also get a command point.
You get a command point for a battalion, and each battalion is going to get an extra artifact.
Yep. And
probably most importantly, each unit in the battalion can be deployed at the beginning of the game all in one drop for the battalion.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll say this, like, I used to be a like only battalion player. Like, I would only make a list if I could reasonably have like a solid battalion in there. But I've moved away from that. I mean,
they've made it harder to do that, is why.
They have, but I mean, but even before they made it harder, like, I ran a no battalion list at Adepticon.
Right.
So, I think that you just have to be a lot more conscious of your play style when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, one thing I wanted to clarify on battalions, they did some FAQ stuff, right, about battalions and allies and how they all work and stuff. Tom, I know you can explain it better than me.
What they did was they basically said that if you have a unit that is not part of your allegiance in a battalion, then that unit still counts as an ally, which is different than the prior edition. It still counts as an ally, but it does not count against your total number of units you can field, like allied units you can field, and it doesn't count against your point limits for allies.
Okay.
But so, for example, in Quadrant Overlords, there is a battalion that lets them include some Stormcast Eternals. Okay. What that would let them do is to play the battalion as a Kharadron Overlord's army. It's a Kharadron Overlord's battalion, but it has some Stormcast in it. So they could run that as a Kharadron Overlord's battalion, but they could still have an additional 400 points of Stormcast in addition to what is in the battalion.
Right.
The restriction here, though, is that they still have to get all of their battle line from their actual allegiance. So, like, if they included, like, Liberators or something, in that battalion, you can't include Liberators, but something that was battle line for Stormcast, even if it was generic battle line, it doesn't count as battle line for your allegiance. And so even though, and again, this is a rules change from last time. The other big change was that if you are including a battalion that is not your allegiance, everything in that battalion counts as an ally, which was a huge penalty. Basically, it made all of the ever chosen battalions unplayable in 2,000 point play in anything other than generic chaos. So this is a big deal for folks that were playing like Plague Touch, like I was, where
heading toward that too.
Yeah, where basically what ended up happening was, because you took Plague Touch to NashCon, didn't you?
No, I was going to, but I took my Tomb Kings final ride.
Good for you, final ride. No, but so basically what ends up happening is that you can't play, because let's say I wanted to do Nurgle in Plague Touched. Well, what ends up happening is because the battalion is ever chosen, even though I only have Nurgle keyworded units in there, so technically they should be in my allegiance, because they're in the ever chosen battalion, they all count as allies, as ever chosen allies, which immediately moves them out of the possibility of including them because you only get 400 points. And that battalion requires 8 units. So
right. Yeah. Oh, it'll work in a 10,000 point game.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So, and then the FAQ actually clarified that, yes, this is what we meant.
Yeah, they really did, we really did mean this. And I'm like,
yeah. Okay. So I know we kind of hopped all around people with talking about this. So maybe hoping people listening to the show probably know what we're talking about the roles and the stuff. And finally, I guess endless spells. So purchasing an endless spell is going to cost points, and purchasing that endless spell gives wizards in your army the ability to cast the spell. Mm-hmm. And they did clarify, Mr. Anti-Cursling and Mr. Anti-Blue Scribes, that you can't cast it if you steal it. Which I thought Blue Scribes was obvious that they could, because it's like they have an ability to know it. So then
they can steal it. They can't cast it.
Right. I know it. I just can't cast it.
Yeah, that's as ridiculous as that is. That's that's the nuance we're in now. You can only cast it if you paid the points.
Right.
They technically know it. They just can't cast it.
Right. So those, but yeah, so purchasing an endless spell, that would be points you have. And then I guess finally is points you don't spend building your army. We talk about this spending 50 points to buy a command point, but it's really every 50 you don't spend is a command point. So, and then those give you extra command points, which is a one-time thing that you have. So, wow. I guess that keep going on. So when you're building your list, so you've chosen your allegiance. Mm-hmm. You've got your battlefield roles or whatever that you've figured out what you're going to have to deal with. So the next thing is in 2.0, you're going to choose the realm your army is from. Right? And that's because, and then you're going to choose a command ability and artifact for either your allegiance or the realm you're from.
Well, so I may have this wrong, but I believe that when you choose your realm, you're only getting the item out of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You're only getting the item.
The command ability comes if whatever realm you're playing in.
Right. I misspoke on that. Yeah. So your command ability is going to be from your allegiance. Mm-hmm. The artifact that you get could be from the realm you're from or from your allegiance artifacts.
Right.
So players may choose command ability and artifact power from the allegiance. Yeah. Players get an additional artifact for each War Scroll battalion that they've chosen.
Right.
And quick question, and I think this is true. You don't have to assign that artifact to somebody in that war scroll battalion.
No,
What do you-
just some.
Oh, in the battalion, no. It's just a bonus one.
Yeah.
But that's not. But you only get one realm artifact per list.
Right.
So, like, if I did Akshi, I'm only going to get one Akshi artifact total.
Okay, so then you would have to go to your allegiance artifacts,
Right.
in the battalions, if you've done your extra one. So you the maximum one.
The maximum one from the realm artifacts. Yeah.
All right.
But if you only get one artifact, some allegiances have better other artifacts than others that might be better than the realm you picked, and some allegiances just
I don't think you
look
should
at the realm.
The realm of light with death. There were a lot of those at last weekend, right?
Out the Midwest.
With the Midwest Massacre or whatever. Lens of Refraction.
Meltdown. I don't know. Like, whatever. Like, I'm
Yeah.
of the mindset that, like,
It is what it
White
is. Right?
zombies.
you can make lore for anything.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, my undead are moss infused undead. So they are dead, but they're suffused with life. And so there's, like, plants and stuff growing all around them.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So they're from the realm of life.
That's like I've seen a lot of like dead Sylvaneth people doing.
Yeah, I actually really like the aesthetics of Dead. Like doing like Dreadwood is a truly like a haunted like,
Yeah.
grove. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a neat effect. I really like it.
So, and finally, we're going to assign spells to wizards. So any wizard or hero you have, you may choose an allegiance spell in addition to those on the war scroll, right? So when you're assigning your spells or whatever that they have. And
But not every allegiance has those. I mean, it's really only the newer ones, right?
Say that again. Sorry.
Not every allegiance has the spells for the wizards, right? It's only really the newer ones.
Yeah. Like you're saying for the endless spells.
no,
No, like where you get like your like
Bonus
Z.
spells?
You get,
I mean, they were given bonus spells all the way back to Sylvaneth. So
okay.
like Sylvaneth, Savage Orcs, or Bone Solitus, sorry. Like all of those have bonus spells.
Okay.
right. So you can pick a spell from there. Now each realm has spells, and the interesting thing is to see how that goes out with tournament organizers. But I guess right now you don't get those spells
Based on your list.
in your
Right.
list, unless there's some special rule, right? Saying it's in this realm, or if you're from that realm, I know that Siege World, the guy has said that basically you pick the realm, you can pick one spell from the realm you're from for every game.
That's really strong still. That's really strong.
So, but we'll see how each tournament organizer handles it. But
He banned a couple spells.
Yeah, like
pack.
he banned Banishment and he banned the flaming missiles one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Banishment and although Banishment got kind of nerfed, but reasonably.
It's still good.
It's still very good.
If I make you pick up your 4 movement dwarves and put them across the table, they're still not getting back in that fight anytime soon.
Right.
That's right.
Especially like, oh, by the way, you think you're on that
Objective.
Hold on just a minute. I'm gonna go find my book. I was pretty sure that you couldn't do multiple items.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. I was about to say.
And everybody else is challenging that statement.
Here, Dad, look. Can you look in the Malign Sorcery book? I know you have it in your room.
Here, I grabbed mine real quick.
I don't have access to any books. Dad has them all in his room.
This is exciting YouTube live.
It is important to get right.
It is important to get right. I could swear it was in there.
After choosing the allegiance for your army, you can decide if it's from a realm. If you do so, select any of your artifacts of power from either or both of the lists in this section.
Checking the General's Handbook real quick.
Yeah. So,
we can move on.
yeah, we'll move on.
And I might be wrong on this. So
Oh my God, sue him. He's wrong.
dun dun dun.
So yeah, basically when you're list building, I guess I wanted to say that they'll in the general's handbook
Mm-hmm.
they'll have this type of stuff that basically is going to go through your unit, and they're going to have a minimum and a maximum size
Mm-hmm.
and the points for fielding that. And some units have discounted points, and so those are one of the things I think when you're building your list, I say discounted points, discounted when they hit maximum size. And that's one of the things that you're going to try and look at when you're building your list, whether you're going to try and maximize that unit for that point discount. Is it worth it? For example, I guess that chain rasp hordes look like they're quite a good buy when you fill them up at 40.
Or the Banshees. The
Or-
Mim.
The Mirmorn.
Yeah, Mirmorn.
Yeah, the 12 for 210.
Yeah,
I like them a lot.
they're really good.
And do your Secateurs get a discount because they're broken?
Because they need a discount.
So, anyway, so yeah, so we've got the assign your spells to the wizards, and wow, that's I'm saying that's a lot, because that's basically what you need to consider or what you need to do to build a list.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right now, a lot of that stuff's scattered across multiple books. But luckily, there is this tool we should mention, War Scroll Builder, on the Warhammer community page, which is a great little tool. And who did that? I forget.
I have no
Tony P. I think Tony P.
Yeah, Tony P did that. Right. So, great tool to. It's hard. I think it would be hard to build it without something like this, or Mark uses the official app.
The app doesn't suck now.
They've got
So it's like useful. Like when you're building, you can actually look at the War Scroll. God forbid you weren't able to do that before. Now it doesn't suck. So
right. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going there with lots of stuff.
we can just we can just figure this out after, and I can make a comment if you
Yeah,
want.
we'll add a comment below.
Yep.
So anyway, I wanted to consider, what do we consider when building a list? I mean, we've talked about all these things, what realm you're from, what your artifact and command ability is going to be. Is that one of the things you look at first, or do you consider a certain style you want to build, or
Inevitably for me, I make a decision very early on. There's basically like two choice points I make. The first one is there a rule that I've found that I want to try to exploit or do something weird with? Okay. And so if I'll find a rule and go, isn't that interesting? I wonder what I can do with this.
right? So we'll change the word from exploit to
I can use to its maximum effect.
right.
I mean, like some would say, like sometimes it's like, oh, that's not intended to work that way. If they think that I'm abusing the spirit of the rules, or others would look at it and be like, oh no, this is just an unrealized potential or whatever. Anyway,
Right. There's some sort of potential rule that you want to use to its maximum effect.
To its maximum effect. So on one hand, it's okay. What's something that I've latched onto that I really like? So an example of this that I recently came onto was the Khorne like blood sacrifice ability. You know what I'm talking about? Where like they can cut themselves and generate blood tithe. I realized that those are mortal wounds. That those are like they're dishing out. And then I went, I wonder how many priests I can get in a Khorne army. And I was like, well, you could run a bunch of heroes. And I was like, but wait, war shrines are also priests. And not only are war shrines priests, war shrines are giving out ward saves, 6-up ward saves, to prevent all those mortal wounds that they're automatically doing. So then my mind started working of like, okay, so now I can generate a ton of blood tithe by multiple priests and multiple war shrines. And not take any of the damage.
Yep.
Nice.
And so I was like, wow. So then I was like, wow. So Khorne can get like a perpetual summoning machine as well, from doing a bunch of damage to itself and then generating that. And if you are killing units, like you could do it to like a low single unit, do those wounds, and then that's going to generate another blood tithe, and suddenly like you're at like a bloodthirster turn 1.
Yeah.
And so it's things like that where I'm like, oh, okay, with A plus B, wait a minute. And I realize that, and then I go from there and be like, well, how can I maximize my priest thing to make sure all these prayers go off? Well, there's a battalion for that. And so that would then lead me to do Gore Pilgrims, which is one of the more, even though it's an expensive battalion at 200 points, it could realistically be an all-in-one battalion. You have a bunch of priests, like 3 priests. You have a blood secretor, which you're going to want anyways, and then up to 4 additional units that are both battle line for you. Right. So it's almost a wonder, like it's that plus some war shrines, and then you're just off to summoning bliss.
Yeah, and so like in a lesser thing, not near as efficient or whatever I was talking to you earlier, but like I basically said, you have an idea you want to play with, like, right? And my idea was like, I want to try and reduce people's bravery and take advantage of that reduced bravery with certain units.
Yep.
That might be just a list idea.
Yeah. So what you do
is strong is what you're talking about, but just kind of what you kind of come up with the idea you're trying to do.
Yeah. So one way to tackle it that my brain does is I find a mechanic like that I want to like utilize. The other way that I tackle it is I find a battalion that I like. Because battalions offer such a strong battalions offer something that the units do not, and they're often unique abilities that can't be replicated any other way in the game. Right. And so Shrieker Host is an excellent example of this. Shrieker Host is in our show on Night Haunt last week. I talked about the fact that I really like Shrieker Host, and Vince is like, "You're crazy, it's dumb, blah 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 blah." But I really like Shrieker Host because it offers 2 unique abilities. One is it forces rerolls of 1 on battle shock tests nearby. And it also says that enemy units nearby can't use their Inspiring Presence. And so the more important of those is the Inspiring Presence, because it takes something that people, when they build their list, they take for granted. I get to use Inspiring Presence. So like I'll take a bunch of extra command points so that I can make immune, blah, 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 blah. Well, what if suddenly I can Alpha Strike with a unit and you can't make it battle shock immune with the normal way that people rely on that? Mm-hmm. And so what I look for in battalions are battalions that either have really strong unique abilities, or battalions that allow me to drop almost my entire army or my entire army in a single drop. Right. Both of those are the things that sell me on battalions.
Right. So I kind of thought we'd go over a little bit about some of the unit types that, a lot of people talk about in terms when they do list building. Mm-hmm. And I guess kind of clarify there. I've heard hammer and anvil, skirmisher, and then something I call an objective grabber. So
while I appreciate those labels, those have been imported from 8th edition.
Right.
In my challenge, the prior edition of Warhammer, and my challenge, the prior edition, because I guess the prior edition is AOS 1. So before AOS 1, back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
Warhammer Fantasy 8.
Yeah, and I'm hesitant because units can be multiple of those things. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, the pigs that Vince so loves in Iron Dog are highly mobile anvils, which is a really unique combination that you don't see in the game a lot. They're a unit that is very mobile. There are a lot of things to increase their mobility, and they can hold units for extended periods of time.
Right.
And so when we say like, this isn't my anvil, it misses those other functions that it has. And so the things that I like to talk about is I like to talk about hammers, like what is going to be doing my damage. And can I do damage to both hordes and to heroes? So do I have high range targeted attacks for heroes and super difficult units to move? And do I have things that maybe are extra effective against hordes? Because sometimes you're going to need both. And most of the time, not always, but most of the time, what is effective against hordes is not effective against those tough to remove heroes or units.
Right.
So I want to have both types of hammers basically. Right. oftentimes I'm going to want to have something that has high mobility and that will stay on the table for a large portion of the game, or be available as a highly mobile unit for a large portion of the game. And so an example of this would be like the Sylvaneth, I forget what they're called, like the little fiddler guys that can like sit on the back of a board edge and then teleport to another board edge. Like this, are they the spite, the revenants?
Tree revenants, right?
Tree revs. There he goes. They're the revenants, not the spites. The spites are the ones that are dumb. But the tree revs are great for just like picking up and moving across the board, and they're like they threaten everywhere. Another example would be something like anything with a real high fly mobility that won't necessarily be in combat. So originally, like I'll look at my list. I'll talk about my list that I ran at Adepticon, because I built that using these types of formula rather than building it based on like a special ability or synergy. So like that list that I built was aimed at being an all-rounders list. And so it wasn't built on any one of those synergy breaking combos, and it wasn't built on any battalion. It was more of an all-comers list that had strengths against certain things in the meta.
Right. That's something I wanted to get to later about how the meta and how you react to it stuff.
It really does influence it. Because originally, like when I built that list, I had been using Endrinriggers as my highly mobile unit. So I had like a bunch of dwarves on foot and like a teleporting, like deep striking unit. And I needed something that could go take objectives and all that. So I was like, I'm going to do Endrinriggers because they're really punchy.
Guys that shoot the
grapples. Yeah, so they could like shoot across the board. But the problem is their inherent play style, and I discovered this, their inherent play style is a suicidal one. You send them into things to blow up, and if you don't, the enemy is going to focus fire on those guys until they die because they're afraid of them. And so they were never actually alive in turns 3 and 4 when I needed them to zip off and take an objective. And so what I wanted initially out of them, they couldn't do because of how you played them. They weren't available to do that thing.
Right.
And so I ended up swapping them actually with Sky Wardens, a unit that I used to just trash talk all the time. And it was the golden formula. It was perfect. Because what that let me do was have tremendous reach on the board. Because they have a 36-inch reach. Because they could fly 12 and they could shoot another 24. So I could reach out and touch everything on the board.
Right.
With ranged attacks. And they were always behind all my masses of bodies. So nobody could actually get to them very well.
Right.
And they were always ready to fly to the objective that they needed to go take. And they had enough melee punch in their skyhooks that they could do damage. A
big thing I've found that like I don't have, like when I build my Skaven Scryer list, there's no mobility. Like I can do the deep strike, and then I can't get any objectives, and that's like I've moved away from it just because. And I've always tried to put like a deceiver in there for the teleportation.
Yeah,
there's just never any room.
Yeah, it's it's a problem that Stormcast has traditionally had as well. Like when they drop, they're there. Like there's no picking them up, and so Lightning Chariot and the new transport thing, the new prayer kind of does that, but still, like, it's tough for them. That's why the Drac lines, by the way, are so strong, is because those Drac lines are adding an element that the army just simply didn't have, which is a high mobility, high offense unit.
Cool.
So, So what I would say is make sure that the functions of the units don't overlap.
Right.
So like sometimes you're going to need one unit that should never be underestimated is the throwaway hammer. There are units that you need to be able to throw forward and they are a sacrificial pawn piece in a chess style game where you're going to throw them before. You don't care if they die. That their purpose is simply to make the enemy player deal with it. Because if they don't deal with that, you're going to smash their entire line or all their key pieces or whatever. And so like Endrinriggers have traditionally been this, is that people just throw them across the table and like you have to deal with that unit, otherwise it will blow up your entire back line. Or almost anything else it touches. And so like monsters are really good for this like big 14 wound pieces are like they draw a lot of attention and they're smashy and they often have high rend and like you just have to do something with it. But what people often try to do is they'll like combine that with their general. And I'm like, I'm going to take a frost heart and throw it forward, and it's like you don't want your general there, especially like oftentimes in games that have secondary and tertiary objectives where they're going to be scoring points by killing your general.
Right.
And so like you need to be careful. Like if you do have your general as a monster on a big smashy monster, you need to understand that sometimes he's not going to get into combat very well because that's not the right play. And so you may need a piece when you're army building to just throw across the table and know that it's going to die and whatever. It doesn't matter if it does. It's done its job.
Yeah,
my Volkite Berserkers were that in my dwarf list.
I noticed that in my Tomb King list because, I mean, with Cetra,
yep,
he's big choppy. He could get out there and do a bunch of damage, but he was so important you couldn't afford to lose him.
Right.
Because he triggered all the other command abilities in the army. Which
he's the linchpin that makes everything works.
Yep. Well, and you have to protect those pieces. Right. And so the categories that I would say is like anvil. Like I still think hammers and anvils are appropriate kind of descriptors. You need things that can take hits, that can take durability. And sometimes durability isn't what you think it is. Durability is like a good save, but it could also be like just masses of bodies are durability.
Yeah, I actually think pink horrors right now are pretty good anvils just because like 200 points for 50 wounds.
It is, but you can only like summon them.
Yeah, you can only summon them. Right.
And so that does hurt it. They like that does. So I'm talking about units that you're going to go like stick on a point and it's not going to move.
Right. Yeah.
Like plague bearers. Plague bearers are the archetypical anvil. Mm-hmm. They're like they have an okay save, a 5-up, rerollable. But the big deal, if there's a hero nearby, rerollable. But the big deal with them is that they're if they have the numbers, they're -1 to hit in melee, -2 to hit at range. And then on top of all that, they have a 5-up, ward save, feel no pain, however you want to call it,
right.
After save. So hammers and anvils, I would say something with mobility. You're going to want to have mobility. You're going to have reach. So one of the biggest things about an army is the ability to project power anywhere on the board. And this is what you were, Mark, this is what you were getting at, is that like the problem is that with those Skyer lists, you would find yourselves unable to actually project power once you had popped up. Like, you could do damage near wherever those things were.
Yeah, wherever they pop up is dying, but
right.
Past that, not.
Right, but you couldn't reach out and touch somebody if like they dropped something in a bad spot.
Yes.
Where like this is some, to jump again. I'll talk about my Adepticon list to demonstrate how this all kind of comes together. But like I could project power almost anywhere on the board, and like when I say power, like devastating. Like I was putting out 18 of the light sky hook shot, so it was like 3s and 3s, -2 rend, D3 damage, and I was putting out 6 drill cannons that was like -3 rend, 4s and 3s, -3 rend, D3 damage, all and another 18 machine guns at like 4s and 4s, -1 rend, all at 24 inches. So I could reach. From that stuff, I could mostly reach most of the board, and then with those Sky Wardens, I could move them around. So I could really reach back and touch people in the back lines. Almost anywhere where anything dropped, I could just turn around and shoot it off the table. Right. And so that's projection of power, is being able to move your damage around. Ranged attacks have traditionally done this very well. Spells do this well. If you're Nagash and you can machine gun a bunch of spells off, drop a bunch of mortal wounds. All of that, being able to reach out and and touch the enemy where they're weak is very important.
Right.
And then mobility, which like the last one is mobility, is being able to move, whether that is being able to like teleport around, air like lightning strike, airdrop, whether that be something like high mobility flight, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So that was one of the things I had to talk about later on our list, but yeah. Mobility was flying and and I guess with the new woods thing, flying became more important.
Oh my, so important.
I've been looking at a lot of like Tzeentch lists just because of that, and Idoneth.
Mortal wounds and rend, I guess, are important keys you're going to have to look at in list building, because, well.
I would say mortal wounds are less important now than they were.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to encounter almost across the board less saves that are 2-up rerollable or 1-up rerollable or whatever
Because of
the Mystic Shield nerf.
Mystic Shield nerf, yeah.
Yeah. And so like when I apply -3 Rend to Nagash, he's now on a 6-up permanently. Like there's no getting around that. Like he's just on a 6-up. He's going to get shot off the table. And there's no way that he can move that number. He still reroll 1s, but he's 6-up reroll 1s. I mean, okay. And so I would say that high Rend or mortal wounds work, and those are obviously important on where whoever is projecting power. This goes back to like your power projection units. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, like I guess I keep going back to my Tomb Kings where I was playing in tournaments or whatever with those, but there's just not a lot of Rend there, and so they really suffered.
I mean, they needed snakes to do the damage, and snakes had a decent mobility, but they could have fly, and that was the key. Is that when they got buffed by Cetra with all the stuff, they could fly, had a decent mobility, and could do mortal wounds.
Right. So,
not as efficiently as other units for the same cost, and that's
Yeah.
True, but they also returned entire snakes, which is
Yeah.
kind of a big deal.
that- so I think one of the things that I guess I'm talking about is that you got to think about is your play style in when you're building your list. And one of the things I listed there is like, how soon are you going to get into combat? How do you want to get into combat? I mean, if you want to think that I just want to push stuff forward and smash face, then you want to build a list that's going to be able to push stuff forward and smash face.
I don't think we have a choice anymore. Like, and I think this is something I haven't talked about a lot on Warhammer Weekly, and so you guys are getting a scoop on my opinion.
Scoop.
I don't think people have the luxury of choosing when they want to get in combat now. Before, there were 1 or 2 lists that could alpha strike. Every single new army that has dropped in the last 6 months can be in your face with most, if not all, of its army in turn 1.
And that's
because Night Haunt, Nurgle, Daughters, all of them.
They all have things that add to their movement. They all have things that
and cogs
command points can make people run 6.
Cogs only made this worse.
Cogs.
The fact that Cogs is +2 run, +2 charge, across the board. It made something like Nurgle's running, like the being able to run and charge. Like +2 movement, +2 charge. Sorry, just made it like ridiculous. The fact that now Stormcast, when they drop at 9 inches, if Cogs is on the table, they're charging. They only need 7s for a successful charge, and they can re-roll those within a command point.
Right.
Same thing with Night Haunt, and not only that, Night Haunt are incentivized to try these charges because on a natural roll of 10, they get to pile in immediately and attack. And so, and Daughters of Cain, they're just lightning fast. They're literally, because they can always run and charge. And so you throw them in like
on the back of the board. You think people are going to be getting to you?
Maybe, but you can't afford to lose your objectives. If you do that, they will move all their bodies on objectives, and then you have to play the reclaim game.
Okay.
And you may not be able to recover your objectives in time. In a Hagnar list with 90 Witch Elf bodies, like in a 5 ward save, one of those getting a rerollable ward save. They could be 4-ups also if they're within range of a shrine. Like, man, like you're going to be grinding, and they're going to get way ahead of you in points. And the irony is they're only going to get better the farther the game goes. And so people may not have the luxury to back board edge.
Right.
And if that's the case, like, it's going to be brutal. Like people like, and so there's a new like unit type that we've forgotten about when we move from 8th edition fantasy into AOS that I think we need to rediscover. And that's the chaff line. that like people need to very seriously begin to think about having units that they can literally just throw away. That their sole purpose in life is to stand between your front line and a charge.
Right.
Because that charge is meaningless if you blow up my 5 Canary melee people, whatever. Thanks. Like, I'm glad you did that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into you with 30 Witch Elves after you've already activated.
Yeah, right. And I was talking to Mark about this with the Idoneth, the eels. Instead of running them like that, you run them like
you always run them sideways.
Run them sideways, and they're more of a skirmish in the sense that they're gonna block that a much larger area, and absorb that first hit because they're so defensive.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I guess in 2.0 we have some shooting nerfs.
Indeed. Which I mean, like, it makes me sad because like it hits right at the heart of the army that I was running.
Right.
I mean, like, I've talked to you about all of my long range, like punchiness that army had, but it also had, like, it was devastating in the mid to short range because I had 30 hand axes from those Volkites, but the Arcanaut Company had 43 pistol shots.
Yeah, that too.
So like between those two units, like I could just like and because of the way that I had built the list, it was flexible enough. Like I could set up like a traditional gun line where they had to fight through either 4-up rerollable save dwarves, 3-up if I buffed them with Mystic Shield, or 4-up save, 4-up ward save, Volkites, all by the way protected by a additional 6-up ward save from the Luminarch. They had to fight through that to get to any of my guns. And so by the time they hit my front line, I'll at least have 1, if not 2 shooting rounds before they even have a chance of punching through one of the sides of my line. And so like that short range, a lot of people didn't think about how devastating that short range shooting was.
Right. But now it's still pretty devastating. I mean, you're only going to get that cover if your whole unit's in a thing. Big thing is, I guess,
you need to make sure that they can't get you into combat. They can't draw you into combat. That's the key.
Right. And you need to, the big thing, I guess, is kind of I don't know, how do you feel the Lookout Sir has changed the shooting?
Against small arms fire, I think that it's going to help. So what I mean by that is things like the hand axes, who were already only hitting on 4s, or the pistols that were like 4s. Like you're not going to use that normally to shoot off because it reduces damage by 1/3 just out of the gate on like those 4-up hits on like small heroes. But like if I'm throwing around 18 light skyhook attacks at 3s and 3s against a hero, I'm still going to take those to 8. I might throw a couple extra of those now 4-up shots at that hero, but it's like I'm still going to kill it dead.
Yeah, right. I think the one thing I've noticed with the Lookout Sir is like it really hurt things. I think like the Skyfires.
Yeah.
Like I've just been looking at like all enlightened because I don't think Skyfires. I mean, they can't really shoot heroes off the board not nearly as well, and they're not worth the points for 220.
I mean, yeah. Like I'm not going to disagree. Yeah.
And then I guess kind of going along with I'm going to say malign. I always say malign portents, malign sorcery, and the endless spells, and it's the magic meta of this game has changed to where magic seems to be so much more important.
It is. I would say that prior to the spell portal nerf, I would not have built a list without an auto unbind. So like the spell portal was so heavy in the meta that I would not have built any list without an auto unbind available.
Wow.
Because that tells like this is what we call like an S category list, like above tier 1, because the spell portal was so heavy it would skew the top tier. Because what you had to do was that if a Nagash list showed up that could throw around like a Nagash or Tzeentch list, that could throw between like 18 to 13 spells into your line at the top of 1, that was going to be a problem. Like, and you had to stop that. You couldn't let that happen at the top of 1.
Right.
And so like that's what the auto unbind did, is it let you just say no. Now, with it only
As a blue Magic player, there's nothing better than
Yeah.
saying no.
Yeah, it's your force of will. Like having your one force of will in hand, it let you say no when you need to say no. Now that's just, it's not like it being limited to one spell. I don't feel that I need an auto unbind anymore. Like it's still good to have one. Like if you have the option of one, like grabbing a Night Incantor or grabbing something like that. Like if I was playing Khorne, I would still probably always take the Brazen Rune as my first item and stuff like that. But you don't have to have that no. Where I felt before, like at the beginning of 2.0, when I was looking at lists, I was like, I'm not willing to run any list that didn't, or it was either, by the way, the unbind, or if I couldn't get at an unbind, I had to have the lens.
Right.
If the lens would help mitigate if that just happened. Right. I could just set up in such a way that the lens will cover functionally my entire army.
So, Tom, you keep leading me into my topics that I'd written down. One of the topics
You're welcome.
is, do you consider or build counters to strong lists, or build your list to be the best it can be?
I never build my list to be the best that it can be. Because some lists, I mean, the best some lists can be are only going to win three games of tournament. Like Swifthawk Agents, as much as I love to rep Swifthawk Agents, I might get 2 to 3 games reliably at a tournament. Maybe.
Right.
Even at their peak performance. And this could be because they're badly costed. This could be because they don't have they're missing certain key elements in their army composition. It could be a bunch of different factors. Okay. I mean, some things just won't perform as well as others. And so I never build things as best as a list can be, because the best crap can be is still crap. And so I always, any list that I come up with, the first litmus test it does is I look at the top 5 to 10 lists that are currently kind of dominating the meta, like what we'd consider as like the most powerful incarnations of things. And I make sure whatever I've created has an answer, even if it's not a good answer, it has an answer for those things in the game.
Interesting.
And so like I will run through, okay, if I set up against a clown car, what does my deployment look like? And how do I respond? If I set up across a murder host, how am I going to stop the murder host from obliterating me before I go? My front line. If I set up across from a Tzeentch change host, what is my reprisal? What are my target priorities? And so like I run that through, and can I remove set pieces, reliably within a turn or two? So I do that mental math on any list I run for all the top lists that are out there. Do I have an answer for X? And if I don't, and if it's a popular list, I'm not going to take that to a tournament. Like I might play it for fun and stuff like that in the house, but I won't take it to a tournament if it's missing key things, or if it performs poorly against some lists in the meta.
Question for you. So with like Nagash and Hand of Dust,
yep.
When you're creating lists, are you seeing yourself? I don't know how, if you put a lot of like big crap in your army, like Great Uncleans and stuff, but you think people will be putting less giant, behemoths in their army just because of Spell Portal Hand of Dust you?
No, you make sure you have enough bodies to set up around the things that you don't want the Spell Portal to show up in.
Sure. Okay.
Like he can't hand it us to you if he can't get the Spell Portal within 3 inches of whatever he's touching. Right?
True.
And so what you do is like, I think about Daughters of Cain. I have 90 additional Witch Elves to say, no, you can't set up a Spell Portal there. And so then that actually means that is actually now dependent upon how you set up your army. And it's going to be another big thing you need to think about is like, does your army have, is there only one way that you can deploy your army? Or is there flexibility in how you can set your army up? Like, do you have a single linchpin that has to sit at the center of your army? So when I ran Nurgle, for example, my Harbinger had to be in the middle. Because it had to be able to have a maximum reach of its thing. And if I couldn't put it in the middle, I would always have a tail back for my Chaos Warriors. And if I couldn't put him in the middle because there was no cover or whatever, that would change my deployment. And I would have to move the tail off to the right or left side of the board where I could reach back and get to the Harbinger.
Right.
where he was safely within cover or whatever, or guarding an objective or any of those things. And so, one of the questions is, how flexible is your deployment? So the advantage of my Fire Slayer list was that was the ultimate, like, kind of, or my Fire Slayer, my like Adepticon list was the ultimate kind of practice in flexible army building, because it had answers for everything. I had functionally 3 centers of power, so as long as my chemists were near my Archon company, I was fine. So wherever I put them in the board, I just made sure chemists were nearby. Wherever I put my Longbeard, I always made sure my Rune Lord was nearby. And then my Rune Smiter would deep strike with my Volkite, so he was always going to be nearby those things.
Right.
And then whatever I needed to threaten, I would place my Sky Wardens last, making sure they're always within a 12-inch reach of the chemist, so that the chemist could buff them at the start of the hero phase before they moved out and shot things. And so the question is, like, the way that language that Vince has used is centers of power. Like, do you have multiple centers of power, and are they flexible in how you deploy them? It's really important. And a lot of people don't think about this. They think, oh, well, I have these items so that I can always synergize to generate this X effect. Yes, that's true, but that means that is a center of power that always has to travel together. And you're not actually going to have flexibility deployment. So if that hero also needs to go take an objective, like let's say it's the equivalent of like 3 places of power or duality of death or one of those. The problem is that if it's a hero that is needed for a synergy, then you can't have that hero reliably holding objectives. So you need to now have another hero that can reliably hold objectives. And so those are the things that you have to kind of think about when list building is, do I have all of my bases covered?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. That was one of the problems I had when I was at the NashCon or Adepticon with my Tomb Kings. Cetra pretty much had to be in the center because everybody had to be an 18 of him, and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, it just kind of.
And that's another thing I think, like, the Idoneths suffer from. It's like if they take out the King or Volturnos, it's like you're kind of like, wow, this is not good. My army sucks right now.
Yeah.
It's turn 2 and Volturnos is dead. What am I going to do on turn 3?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a real high
Get to turn 3 now? I don't know.
I don't have a real high opinion of Idoneth.
Yeah, neither do I. I bought them all, and I'm not playing them. If that means anything.
Doesn't surprise me, honestly.
So, what was the other things that we wanted?
Oh yeah, and by the way, Idoneth are another example of that first turn charging.
Oh yeah,
because obviously they get the +3 hero and they deploy and everything comes in, and like they can reliably do that. And now if they
can deep strike too.
Yep, they can deep strike, and now with cogs, like, it just makes it worse.
Yeah.
I guess I know you've said you're not going to take Morathi now because of certain things. Because it was the FAQ that goes into this. That has the FAQ made you consider different units or artifacts that, or the way the rules work now.
I was always sketchy on Morathi. Like, she was always like, because the problem is this goes back to incentive structures. So like whenever you analyze a unit, you're going to think about, like, how am I going to use this thing? And you either want to use it like as X most of the time, or like it can do X and Y. And the problem is that Morathi doesn't do X or X and Y. She does X or Y.
Right.
So either she functions as a general and a caster, or she's going to function as a beat stick and not as a reliable caster. And the challenge here is that with the new world we live in with endless spells, like, all the mortal wounds that she's taking from endless spells don't count as, like, the limit. And so, like, she can be assassinated in a turn now, where before she couldn't.
Right. That was a big change where they basically said the wounds for endless spells don't count in the turn, right?
Yep. And so that, coupled with the fact that, like, one of her utilities was, and I, like, by the way, like, I think that she was probably one of, if not the best spellcaster for endless spells previously, because she doubled the range. And so she could place things out pretty significantly far. You couple that with something like a Balewind Vortex that could also increase the range by 6 inches. And suddenly, I mean, she had real reach.
Right.
But with the FAQ and the nerf, she suddenly became a non-reliable spellcaster that could die in one round. And at 480 points,
right. Even as a monster, I mean, we used to think, well, you'd put that she'd go on the board as a monster, and you'd immediately transform.
right?
Right. But now it's still
Right. She's 12 wounds, and she could die in 2 turns now. 3 from fighting and 3 from endless spells.
Right.
Yeah, it's just not like it's way too dangerous. Or heaven forbid, somebody throws a purple sun into her.
Right.
Does more damage.
Mark, your list had sort of a hope and a prayer to take out Morathi at Adepticon and stuff.
Oh yeah, brass orb, man.
Brass orb. It's like, well, I'm going to take this because I have no chance other than this to take out something like that. So, not a good chance, but at least it was some answer.
I have not yet brass orbed anything. I didn't brass orb anything at NashCon. I didn't brass orb anything at Adepticon.
I mean,
and it makes me sad.
Math is against you.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know,
you'd think I'd roll a 6 between like the 10 rounds I played in a tournament.
It's the same reason why I don't play Kraith in Daughters of Cain, because Kraith requires, like if you're familiar with the rule for that temple, like after everybody's piled in and fought, you can roll a dice, and if you roll a 6, you get to do it again.
Yeah,
like that.
It's a very powerful effect, but it's not reliable.
It's not reliable, and really, like when daughters get into things, everything turns to mist. Like it doesn't normally stick around,
right.
And those things that do stick around,
you're
beating on them again for another round isn't going to do anything.
So,
or oftentimes it has a very reduced effect because they're obviously they're like a 2-up rerollable save or something.
Right. So we were just for the people who don't know, brass orb is like what
one. You roll 6, you kill something that's within 6 inches.
You get one roll out.
Once per game.
Once per game.
Roll a 6, remove a model. But it is an answer.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
Like, you can think that it's an answer, but that's just mental comfort that you're giving yourself. You're lying to yourself because it's just not reliable. And at the end of the day, like if you're in an event setting, you need to have a more reliable answer to something.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you what, with the new like realm artifacts, I definitely won't like the other artifact. Like getting that lucky was worth it because there wasn't really any artifacts that were worth taking over it. But now with the realm artifacts, it's definitely worth taking just a overall better artifact.
Yeah,
right.
I would agree with that.
And so your Tom, you talked about the things. I guess I wanted to bring up we should talk about like IDNF have the different enclaves, the different Stormcasts have the different chambers, the daughters have the different I don't know what they're called. But those give special allegiance abilities too, right?
They do, and those are the types of things where you need to pay attention to them because those are where those exploity combos are going to come from, are those very highly optimal things. Because like oftentimes it's like those blanket rules that suddenly interact in a weird way that you didn't anticipate that generate something that's punching way above its weight. So a good example of this is like Celestial Vindicators, which is the new Stormcast battalion, or the new Stormcast like Storm host. Which, by the way, let me just say, like all the Storm hosts that they just released are very well balanced, because I can't take any of them without feeling the pain of taking them. They set your command trait and they set your item. Like with daughters, you could squeak around and be like either command trait or item. But with the Storm host, you lose both. Like, and it's painful. You gain a command ability and you gain a generic ability, but you lose both your first item and your command trait. Like you feel those penalties. But the Celestial Vindicators, if you guys aren't familiar with it, they're like they get like everybody, all the Storm hosts get a single they get a people are suggesting instead of the language of exploiting in the chat, they're suggesting just cheating.
I'm defending you. Don't worry.
If it's in the rules, anyways.
True.
But Vince likes to call it cheating just because he doesn't like it when I find something and then smash them off the table. But so for the command ability, it like you at the beginning of the command phase, you trigger it and you choose a unit. It adds +1 attacks characteristic with melee weapons until the end of the phase. Okay, neat. Like it's +1 attacks. But you combine that with something like your Dracolines, right? The new like cat invoker unit.
Yeah, the weird dog looking thing.
Where they have 2 profiles. Like they have a cat profile and an invoker profile, which means that +1 attacks is +2 attacks per model.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
So like suddenly, because both the cats have an attack and the rider has an attack, that +1 attacks is not +1 attacks; it's +2 attacks per model.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because both are getting that ability, like because everything gets that +1 attacks. Now you combine that with the fact that like you reroll hit rolls of 1 when they charge and move in the same turn. These guys are going to be folks that are going to be running and charging. So now you have units that can like run and charge, and when they get into combat, you trigger this ability, and now they're running around with like reroll 1s to hit, +2 attacks per model.
Right.
That ain't too shabby.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, like and so it's sometimes it's just those combinations of like how those things interact with like multi-attack models and stuff like that like it really kind of trips it off and it becomes really good.
And a lot of times those enclaves and or storm hosts or something will kind of like a battalion lead you into like X and X units like Ideneth, for example. If you go Futh and you're not going to be really running any Namarti, you're just going to be running Eels.
Right. And I love that, by the way. Like I was really sad.
They suck, yeah.
No.
Me too.
No, I was really sad when like the storm hosts came. Because I wanted to see them have that similar level of like altering battalions and making battalion like some storm hosts were doing some things better. Like the people who are like monster hunters, I expected them to be like real deep in the Vanguard stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like with the like Vanguard hunters and the Raptors, and like I expected them to have something for those folks, and like they don't. It's just generic. So I wanted it to be a lot more like the Deepkin, or a lot more like the temples for daughters, and it just wasn't. So I wish they would have done that, but maybe it's an elf thing, because both the only 2 elf releases we've had have had types of customizations. So who knows?
So, I guess we're going on an hour and a half here, so we probably ought to be getting close to the end. Anything else you think people should consider? I know that one thing you've made me realize is that if you're really going to be a top player, as sad as it sounds, you kind of got to know what everybody else can be doing.
You always have to know. G.I. Joe, by the way, was right.
Very heavy game.
Well, they were partially right in that knowing is important, but it's not just half the battle. Like when I say they're partially, they were half right. Knowing is all of the battle. Because there were some games I walked up to at Adepticon that I knew I had won the game before we put models down on the table. And that's not me being cocky or anything like that.
Yeah, no. You're
just simply
a lot better.
I can do the math. Like I look at it and go, okay, I'm going to outdrop this army, which means I get to go first. Because I get to go first, I would deep strike. I knew how to deploy. I would deploy everything accordingly. I would go first. I would bring up my Volkites and take the entire middle of the table and all the objectives. And so now I have a Battle Shock immune unit that has pinned them functionally in their starter zone, that they are going to take 2 turns minimum to fight through, while my entire army is shooting on all of their stuff. They don't have a chance.
Right.
And it's just numbers at that point.
Math hammer.
It's math hammer, right. And so knowing the capability of your opponent will inform how you set up your models, where your position, what line of attack you go in. So I think about like I know Relian's in the comments. When I played Relian at Adepticon, we matched up in the 1K games, and he was playing a Tzeentch mixed list, and I was playing my like a variant of my mixed order with a bunch of dwarves. And because I knew what his capabilities were, and because he knew what my capabilities were, the game largely was not a game. In that, like, we just kind of like jockeyed around, and like I made a gambit where I dropped my Volkites and charged, and depending on how long the charge was, that probably would have dictated whether it was going to be a win for me or a draw. And that's it. Because we both knew kind of what was going on, and neither of us were going to be fooled. You know, and when we finished the game, Relian, you know, we reached across and shook hands, and he's like, yeah, I was playing for a draw. And yeah, like given the matchup, like sometimes there's only so many things that you can do. And so you have to play for that draw because you know you're in a bad spot with a bad matchup.
Relian's in the comments. Hey man, congrats on your victory last week.
Yeah, and Relian, for those that don't know, Midwest Meltdown, Relian took first.
So. Yeah, go look at his Hand of Dust thing on his Twitter.
Yeah, that was impressive.
It's impressive.
His Nagash reached out and touched people in very bad places.
Yes, his Nagash also better than other people's Nagashes.
One true Nagash.
Yeah, so no, it's it's a scary Nagash is a scary model for sure. But he's less scary now. And honestly, like if there are a couple good shooting armies that can also mix it up, like I think about my mixed order list, like it will put Nagash in the ground at the top of one.
Like that.
Like
I heard people say the Celestial Ballista, right?
I'm not as hot on the Celestial Ballista. I know a lot of people are. Because it's doing a damage, like it's doing multiple shots, but it's only doing one damage a shot. You know, like I would rather do like like D3 wounds at neg 2 rend and do like 18 of those or more. You know, like there's just so many options for really scary shooting out there that aren't the Ballista. The Ballista's good, don't get me wrong. I just in order to make it work, I think it takes too much, and you're going to lose too many drops at the end of the day because you need like 4 of them to really put out serious range damage. That's without like battle line. That's without supporting heroes, which you're clearly going to have probably like a Ordinator and a Luminarch, and suddenly like you're running like you're in like the teens for the number of drops that you have, and so it's just not. It's going to be painful.
And we've thrown the term drops around a lot, and so but by drops, basically we're talking about when you deploy, you have take turns deploying, and the person who gets done deploying first is going to choose whether you go first or whether they go first.
Yep.
And which really, like you said, dictates basically the game at that point.
Against some lists, it can dictate the game.
Some lists, it dictates the game, and so having a lower drop army is advantageous, and you can try and get that.
Yeah, and it's why chaff is so important now, because there's so many armies that are going to charge turn 1 or have the option of trying. Like they don't have to charge turn 1. But they're going to have the option of charging turn 1. And if you have a gap or a hole in your army, they're going to exploit it every single time. They're going to drop across from you. They're going to cogs up, and they're just going to smash you in the face. And so there needs to you need to have some defense against that. That may be some combination of like the spell scroll to get rid of cogs if it hits the table. That could be that could be having chaff units, like having screens to absorb the charge.
Right.
It could be a variety of different, but goes back to what I was saying. Like you need to have a plan. You have to have a plan in place for what happens when you're staring across, the table against like key strong armies. Like whatever top tier armies are out there, they're going to have very, very, very high damage to counter all the regeneration that Nagash has, like the Nagash legions of Nagash armies. Right. Because they're going to be returning tons and tons and tons of undead models.
So you might see like a screen of like chain rasps or whatever, and then the important guys behind them or whatever, and then they're going to hit that, and that's they're going to stop there. They can't get to the other stuff.
Yep.
So, and also that like chaff is important for deep striking. You can bubble wrap your stuff so it doesn't get deep strike charged on turn 1 type stuff with, especially like with the Scryer list. I go back to this a lot just because it has so much deep strike. If they were a good player, I knew if they were a bad player, I knew I auto won the game. Like the way they set up, because on turn 1 I would pop up and kill all their important stuff, but if they were a good player,
You would get nothing.
I would get nothing. I would get crap.
Yep.
And then they would just kill my stuff.
Yep.
So,
And this goes back to like the the Scryer list is what I'd call a skew army.
Yeah.
In that, like, it's exactly what you just described. Against some armies, some opponents, it's a win, auto win. Against some armies, some opponents, it's an auto lose.
oh yeah.
There's no flexibility there, and
Some
so
scenarios where it's like an auto lose.
yeah.
Like at NashCon, like games 0. Like I won the first 3 games, and then I was on table 1 and 2 for the last 2, and both opponents, you could just tell, knew what was happening. They knew how to set up, and I lost because I lost on the setup, honestly.
Right. Yep. And so, like, whenever you're list building, and again, like, I don't want to take it away at all from like fun lists.
Oh yeah.
I put Night Haunt lists together, and then just like mostly the starter box with a unit of Banshees or whatever. Like, it's just like I throw a bunch of stuff on the table and we move stuff around and play and have fun. But that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about list building. I'm talking about like competitive list building where you want to walk away with hardware. You want to walk or a chance at hardware.
Right. There's a difference between tournament list building and there's a difference between playing a tournament and playing in a garage.
Yeah.
Or playing in your basement with your friends.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking. I guess really hardcore list building is what we're talking about here, as opposed to just kind of having fun list building.
Yeah, I mean, because like with having fun list building, like play what you want. Like
rule of cool.
Yeah, that yes, indeed, that's a phrase that Vince my co-host, is very fond of. Rule of cool. And whatever. Like I like efficient things even when I play fun games. Much to Vince's chagrin. Like I may not be like worrying about like covering all of my bases, but oftentimes like I want to do a neat trick or I want to see how something performs in like a fun game. So like when I was up in Columbus last week until a week ago, and we had kind of a fun pickup game he talked about on the show, and I was like, I want to see how these new Stormcast perform. So I grabbed, a unit of 10 Sequitors and some other stuff and mixed it in and grabbed like a unit of 5 Evokers on foot. And I was like, I wonder what these guys can do buffed up. And so, he lined up Archeon, and I was like, well, let me force this combat and see what happens. And sure enough, the Sequitors walked away without losing a model. So, like, but
he ran his Archeon or Mark. I don't know if you saw that, but he basically ran Archeon leading a ton of rats.
Yeah. It was an entire Skaven army with Archeon at the front, and like it was a fun list, and like we were playing around and kind of joking around. So it didn't really matter, but I was wanting to test some of the capabilities of and certain tricks, like how hard and how killy was a Sequitur unit, like a unit of 10, and I was pleased. I was 3 up rerollable saves with. Then those 2-handed weapons you get 5 of them for 10 models. So they're like, it's the best bang for your buck at 10. Like 20 is good, but 10 gives you the most 2-handed weapons.
So, well, Tom, I think we're getting to the point that we're going to have to call it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to get you back on for advanced list building.
I think this was pretty advanced.
And
it doesn't get really more advanced than this. Like this is a process I go through literally with any type of list that I'm going to create.
I'd like to have you on and go through some of the top lists and why they're good and what what you might expect to see at a tournament with things as things shake out.
I would love to come on and talk through those.
So, I can tell you kind of like talking about Warhammer.
I do. It's my career is such that I spend a lot of time researching things and writing and composing arguments and stuff like that. And what's hilarious about it is that Warhammer, it's a delight because it's not something I have to like research. Because it's like, it's fun and it's like, it doesn't take work to do this. As opposed to like when I do similar things in my professional life, like I have to actually like spend a lot of time preparing for this kind of stuff. I could just go on and talk, and it all comes fairly natural. So,
yep. So, well, I guess that's it for now, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in probably 2 weeks. We're trying to make this sort of an every other week show. Unfortunately, like we said, Mark's schedule gets kind of goofy, so we can't pick a.
I think I've got every Saturday off from now for the next 8 weeks though. So
it might have to be Saturday evening. Warhammer Mom might have some arguments there though too. So anyway, so that's basically it for now. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It was a blast.
Definitely.
And we will talk to everybody later. Thanks, and have a good
see
week.
you guys.